All right, Alexander Haneng has requested me to do an analysis of one of his talks, how brave he is. Are you ready for this, Alexander?
A bit scared, to be honest, but let's go, David.
Of course. Okay, let's have a look. Well, obviously, whenever I look at anybody doing anything, it's the first 30 seconds are super important to have a look at, more crucially than the rest.
I want to start off.
All rightio. So let's see there if I can pause. Okay. All right. So we begin just before hearing you say anything. I think your posture is good. Straight back, shoulders back. I like that. Even hip bones. Nice. Got a closed and locked body language with your hands. That would give you a minus point. You are tilting your head slightly to the right, which would give you a plus point because it shows that you care and that you want to listen in to the people that you are going to talk to. Now let's play.
I want to start off with a joke.
So you do a gesture, a functional gesture of inviting the audience by show your hands like this. Now that is a functional gesture which is saying hi and welcome. You're all included in my talk, but it's way too narrow to actually say that. So this is something that you're conscious about using or unconscious about using, doesn't matter. The only thing you have to do is widen it and show with your entire arm, chest, and hands that you're welcoming them to your talk. Okay,
with a joke, and an old joke at that.
That's good. A joke and an old joke at that. That one is called an anadiplosis in rhetoric. So you would actually score a point for that. That's nice fluid language. We like that. A bit of a smile as well, I sense.
And it goes like this. An old woman goes into a post office with a big parcel. She hands it over to the postman, who weighs it and says, "Madam, I'm sorry. This package is too heavy. You need to add some more stuff."
Good facial expression. You can see his eyebrows tilting down, again, head tilting to the right.
Stamps. Whereupon the lady asks, "Oh, will that make it lighter?" Of course, adding stamps will not make a parcel lighter.
Smiling, that's good. It's interesting to see. Look at the slight wobble in your elbows when giving the point of your joke.
Of course, adding stamps will not make a parcel.
You see that? So that's a sign of insecurity. Did my joke work or didn't it work? It's an interesting tell.
And as you can see, David, the problem here is that I'm very limited in the camera. That's why I have to limit my motions with my hands as well. So that was one restrictions of this setup. And it was a webinar filmed in a studio that was totally empty of people. So.
Okay. Wow, so that is very restrictive when it comes to gestures. Then why on earth did they do that? That's I wouldn't recommend that.
They get to see me full frame and the presentation though, instead of me being a little stamp in the corner. So I guess that's why they chose that setup. But that also gives some limitations.
Yeah, can't have everything, can you? All right, so. With that background, of course, you're doing your best when it comes to your gestures. That is for sure. All right, let's have a look at that.
This package is too heavy.
I like how you're leaning forward there as well, making a point.
You need to add some more stamps.
Good register increase, some more stamps.
And the lady asks, "Oh, will that make it lighter?"
Mm-hmm. And then again, leaning forward.
Adding stamps will not make a parcel lighter.
All right, so having a look at the first 30-40 seconds, I would say that you've got some facial expressions, you've got functional use of your head, you've got functional use of your hands, you've got a register increase, which is quite rare. You've got a good amount of pauses, a little bit of a tick where you open your lips, and you can hear a audible smack. It's very, Very subtle, but it's still there if you listen to that.
To the postman, who weighs it.
There you go.
And says, "Madam, I'm sorry, this package is too heavy. You need to add some more stamps." Whereupon the lady asks, "Oh, will that make it lighter?" Of course.
And there you go again. And just wetting your lips or not closing them is an option here.
Adding stamps will not make a parcel lighter. But I ask you this question: how much does a stamp weigh?
Looking from a content perspective, starting with a joke is great. And obviously this is in context considering who you are and what you work with. So I really like that. That's nice. I like the relaxed smile as well.
Think about that, and we'll get back to that question a little bit later.
It's good. Did you see how you squinted your eyes when you said, like, think about that? And that's a functional use of eyes as well. So when you look at your facial expression, you have areas of your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes, and then you have your mouth, and then you have the general area of the cheeks. And so far we can see you using your eyebrows, your eyes, and your mouth. Well done.
The core topic of this webinar is, of course, not stamps. It's digitalization and the effects on your company or your organization.
Good use of words.
It's a difficult concept.
Again, squinting your eyes, tilting your head to the left. And you're talking about it's a difficult concept, which means that you are adhering to their maybe limited insight into it. Very functional. Seems like you give away a very honest impression, and that is, it's not, I would say, it's not common, it's not uncommon either, but it's rare in a way.
To grasp from a leadership standpoint, because there's so much going on. So
good functional gesture, so much going on.
Quickly, just as Toppy explained in his presentation. But in my
could have used a use of voice the way you go, like, so much going on, and it's happening so quickly. So you could have adjusted pace and volume in your words and in the way you said it to add to the gestures as well.
In my experience, it boils down to 6 things, and I want to share those 6 things with you.
Nodding in confirmation, right? So that's good. Affirmative head nod.
The first one being changed behavior. And I would say this is the most important one, because when our customer changes behavior, that makes new threats for our company and new possibilities.
Right, having a look at content again, as you're jumping into the actual content now, you're going to go through 6 things which has an impact. When looking at a content and a structure to begin with, when you're delivering a presentation, you should preferably have a respect phrase, and then you should have a polite phrase, and then an attention grabber, and then subject, and then an objective, and then you build your ethos, and then you have practical information. So you usually have 7 things that you cover when you start a presentation. And so far, you could have had a respect phrase that is complimenting the people listening. You did have an attention grabber. That is quite rare, actually. So well done on that. That's the joke. And then now you jumped in more or less to the content. You could have had a stronger objective prior to this. And as you didn't build your ethos and credibility, I assume they already know who you are. Or you had a moderator who told them who you are. But it was, I like the attention grabber.
For example, when I was a kid, we took pictures with a camera with film in it.
That's good. Sharing a personal anecdote that increases your likability. Well done, Alexander.
But for some reason, nobody took selfies.
Good register increase again. Good pause.
Is that everything is going online, from your toaster to your car, but also as our company, our cars go online, and so does our sorting facilities. This, of course, generates enormous amounts of data from different sensors.
Could have gone again with the voice, enormous amounts of data. I think that could be a pretty easy thing for you to improve.
And this data lends itself very good to machine learning, AI, and analysis, providing more efficiencies, deeper insight, and new possibilities to earn money. The fourth thing, and I'm sure you're going to say globalization, Alex. We've had that for a long time, and that's true. My great-great-grandfather, he actually sailed all the way to China to trade. But the interesting thing to have in mind when it comes to globalization is that it affects different parts of society and different
good increase of volume, different
industries at different times. Let me give you an example.
Examples are good.
100 years ago, you might be the only bank in town. There will be very little competition.
True.
Then we got national competition for customers. And now I would say we have Nordic competition for the bank customers. But it won't be long until we got global competition for the bank customers when tech giants like Alibaba, Facebook, and Google comes into the market. So you need to keep track of globalization, how it affects your industry.
That was a good example. Well picked. Okay, so whenever you deliver a presentation, you should preferably have an example for each section that you go through, which you want to create it really. You want to make it persuasive. Examples are brilliant for that. Storytelling is an extended form of example.
The fifth part is the one that excites me the most, me being a tech geek.
Yes, I like that. Nice one. Okay, so obviously saying that you're a tech geek increases your credibility. So well done on that. But just saying it is not the key. Doing what you're doing at the moment is key, where you show a gesture, empowering it. You smile genuinely, truly, for the first time in your presentation, 3 minutes and 30 seconds in. You can see it in your eyes, the gaze, your head is dead straight. This is all a very beautiful thing called synchronization, which means that when you say something, everything adds up, or the 5 layers of communication, and they are body language, gestures, facial expression, voice, and words. And this is the first time they have all 5 been fully synchronized. Very nicely put. You can easily use this as a reference to go back, like, how did I feel then? And how can I express this earlier in my presentation?
And that's, of course, new technology. It's 3D printing, IoT, machine learning, self-driving cars. But it might be the least important one because they're just enablers for everything else. The sixth and final point that I want you to keep your eye on.
I am impressed by your lack of pauses. Your lack of filler words. I'm impressed by the use of pauses. Looking at your PowerPoint makes sense as well. I prefer using contrast. So when you brought up one object, the other one grays away so that you always know what to focus on, even if you looked away for a moment.
On is that we now have a supercomputer in our pocket.
In our pocket? I like that. It's the third time you use a higher register. Usually you use that in combination with humor, and you do that really well. That is very rare. You can hear it in comedians and very skilled presenters. So plus point.
And again, you might say, Alex, that is not something new. We have had iPhones for over a decade now. What are you talking about? But the thing is, if you follow the specification of the new flagship phones carefully, you would see there was a shift about 2 years ago. A shift in computing.
It's a shift about 2 years ago. A shift. Again, you're using an anadiplosis, which means that your language again feels smooth and easy to listen. It comes close to music when you use rhetorical devices like that.
Computing power in each phone that now allows for machine learning on the phone.
You used the finger to count. That's the first time. You could have used it a couple of times before this as well. So you can just learn from this example and apply it to previous examples and perhaps future examples as well.
Reality, augmented reality on the phone. Earlier, when you talk to Siri, you would have to take a sound file, move it through the internet, be processed by a data center.
Very nice functional gestures from Siri to the cloud or whatever, and process that. That was super as well.
Then go back to your phone. Now that can be done on your phone directly. And you're going to see some new applications and features coming in the next 3 to 5 years that will be radically different from what we've seen so far. So digitalization is a big challenge for our corporations because there's so much new complexity, so much change, and it gets ever faster. And we need a different way to work.
I think the section between around 313 to 420 was really interesting to look at, because after you said that you were a geek, you kind of let loose a bit more. So this minute was a lot better than the 0 to 3 minutes. And that's usually what happens when you connect to your own emotion. That is when you become a stronger public speaker. And a way to hijack that is to start your presentation with something that invokes your emotion. If you can't do that, you should do it before your presentation instead, so that you're already hooked up into your own emotion, so that you don't have to wait 3:13. This is especially important when you publish things on social media or YouTube, because people hook into your emotion, and if they have to wait 3 minutes for that to fully kick off, they're not going to wait for it. It's a different setting when it comes to public speaking on a stage and people are sitting in front of you, of course. But you found it there. I like that.
To be able to survive in this new environment. And the way we see it, it's all about build, measure, and learn. It's about building.
Build, measure, and learn. That's the power of 3. It's good use. Score point for that.
Quickly into the market. Then measure it and get learning from those features that we put out, and then change and have that repeat cycle. The way I usually explain it is, if you want to create a new car model, that's quite expensive. It's upward of 100 million euros to create a new car model. Why so expensive?
You tilt your head. It's very nice timing. So why so expensive? Nice.
Well, first of all, you need to have a cool new design that will sell your car.
You raise your eyebrows.
You might hire a Californian designer to do that. Then you have to do an engine that has lower emissions than last year's, following new standards. You have to crash test it. You have to make tools for the factory, and you have to produce the car and roll it out. And let's assume this car is made in 1 million cars and sold all over the world, including the Nordics.
It's one of your first filler sounds there in 5:32. That's stellar performance, Alexander.
And one guy goes out one morning, this happens. Yeah, I don't want that. That's a bad thing. But the question is, why did this happen?
Using video is good. Using humor is always is advantageous.
The reason is the complexity now is so high that you can't foresee everything. That's why you need to test early and often. And do you think fixing this problem now, after manufacturing 1 million cars, is expensive? Yes. Do you think changing this early?
You good? Using a rhetorical question. Get a point for that as well.
In the design process is cheap? Yes, exactly.
Leading questions, that's good.
So Posten and Bring have been on a journey for the past 3 years, since our CEO, Tone Ville, decided that we're going to focus a lot more on corporate innovation. We, as many other companies, have
often got clenched fists and closing your body language. I prefer not to see that. But then again, then you would have to drop your arms to the bottom, and then every time you do a gesture, you had to pick them up. That looks strange as well. Put you in a hard spot here, that's for sure.
Following the traditional waterfall method, where some manager decides you're going to make this product.
Ooh, double shoulder shrug. But look at that. You need to pause slow motion. Can I do slow motion? Can't do slow motion. You'll have to do that in the editing.
On corporate innovation. We, as many other companies, have followed the traditional waterfall method, where some manager decides you're going to make.
Where some manager. So you're saying the double shoulder shrug is a way of saying that somebody who might not know what they're doing, you don't really know where it's heading. It can also be shown to show innocence in a way. I don't know. Was it me? Who was it? But the thing that you used a double shoulder shrug was is important, because if it's just one shoulder, it's ironic or sarcastic, and that wouldn't have been nice to those people that you were talking about.
Make this product or service, and an organization creates it, and then it goes out to the consumer. Sometimes it's a success, sometimes not.
Such an easy functional gesture. When I teach people in public speaking, that is one of the core gestures that I teach everybody, because it's such an easy thing to apply to your presentations, where you go like option 1 and option 2. Let's have a look at option 1. Option 1 means that you get a green and red version, which comes with a tree. Option number 2 is made out of oil and creates like tarmac. You can do that in any room. One of my favorites, now you can't do it, but just as a recommendation, when you've got a room, you can actually walk to a particular place in the room and place something there. You're like, this is option 1. And then you walk to a different place in the room, you're like, this is option 2. And then you go back to where you were, and then you go like, let's start with option 1. And then you talk about option 1. And people are like, wow, and they'll see this thing building up on stage. Then you talk about option 2. And then that will build up on stage. And then suddenly it's you with 2 invisible objects, which they're so clear to them. You could kind of walk out, come back the other day, and you go like, so we had option 1. And people go, yeah, we had option 1. Yeah, it was that thing, wasn't it? It's a brilliant move.
But we needed a better method. And that's why we developed our own method for innovation called Helix, based upon really good principles that already exist in the marketplace, like design thinking, build, measure, learn, and Google Design Sprints. It has 3 very distinct phases. The first one being explore, second create, and the last one implement. In the explore phase, we actually deep dive into the problem we want to solve. Then we do prototypes. We build mock-ups of a solution, either on paper or digitally, and test them on real customers.
Just generally from a PowerPoint perspective, I would say that there's too much information on this compared to what you're saying. It'd be cool if you built that. You're revealing quite a lot of data and facts at the moment, which would make sense to visually enhance.
Customers. Bear in mind that customer might be an internal employee. Secondly, we go into what we call...
This is one of your favorite gestures. And you use that to increase significance of what you're saying, like, now this is important. And one is
called the pilot phase, where we test a solution that feels real to the consumer, but it's all fake behind the scenes.
Good pointing to yourself.
Just like if you go to Hollywood, to the Western set, and see behind the storefronts, there's nothing there.
Smiling.
But for the consumer, it feels like a real service.
Nice.
We get to see if the customer really uses the service over time, and if they're willing to pay what it really costs. In the third phase, we implement it and scale this. And this is where the power of a corporation really shines. My background is 10 years in startups. And I can tell you, you will never be able, as a corporate, to run as fast as a startup. But you can run faster. However, where you have an advantage is in this phase, when you can scale up much faster than any startup.
Very nice use of facial expressions and voice and gestures there. That was also a highlight. 802, nice one.
Or all your existing employees, your IT systems, and all the other capabilities. If we compare this to the waterfall method, you see we spend a lot more time going down into what is the real problem we want to solve for our consumer. Since we implemented this, we have trained over 300 of our...
What was that? A sigh? Since we implemented this. Yeah, that creates engagement, that's for sure. All right.
Employees in this method, including our whole board of directors and our CEO, which you can see in this picture. But what does this is the theory. How does this work in real life? Well, let me give you an example. Let's go back to the question I asked initially. How much does a stamp weigh? The answer is about 1 gram. But
it's interesting to see that what happens psychologically. So you went into this thing, you sighed, and you lost track twice. It's like, oh gosh, I have to get into this bit of my presentation. I don't know what happened, but it was It's quite interesting to see how things follow through. It's like the same thing you did when 313, when you went like, I'm a nerd, and then you rocked it, and now you went like, chink. It's interesting when I teach public speakers that when they're on stage, they need to find. They need to be able to create associations when on stage in order to refill their energy over and over and over and over and over again, so that they've got full energy into each section.
But actually,
I know that's more hard now when we don't have someone in the audience. Because usually you get the laughter, you get some reaction. But I mean, when you stand there in a big empty room, that's so much harder.
Oh yeah, no, it is. Yeah, but you gotta either you gotta have fun yourself, or you gotta just imagine that they're there. And that's the thing when people come to me and they say, we're doing public speaking now on camera. Can you help us? What's the difference? And I say there's one key difference, and that is that it is way harder to keep the audience hooked and entertained. So you have only one option, and that is to level up as a public speaker. It's more important than it's ever been before, because before, when you put people in a room, they showed respect by at least staying in the room. Now they can just pop off like this. So yeah, I know it's difficult. I do keynotes every single day digitally. It took a while, but either you've got to have all the fun in your own head, or you got to imagine that they're having fun on the other side. All right.
The right question is, why does a stamp have to weigh anything?
That's a good question. Ooh, wow. Well, that's the longest pause yet. That was super awesome. Well done.
We were thinking, why do you actually have to have a physical piece of paper that you glue on your letter or parcel to send something? And the answer, of course, you don't. So we came up with a concept of digital stamps. You buy them on your phone, you get a 9-digit code, and you write it on your parcel. So is this a good idea? Will consumer understand this?
Rhetorical question.
Or will they prefer the traditional stamp? Well, we did prototype.
Interesting. Okay, let's have a look at your head movements. Just signal those out for a moment.
You don't.
All right. Left tilt.
So we came up with a concept of digital stamps.
Right tilt.
You buy them on your phone, you
left
get a
tilt.
9-digit code, and you write it
straight.
on your parcel.
Left tilt.
So is this a good
right
idea?
tilt.
Will consumer understand this?
Left tilt.
Or will they
right tilt.
prefer the traditional
left
stamp?
tilt.
Well, we did prototyping
Straight.
and tested and came up with this concept.
All right. I would say that's an excessive amount of tilting. You wouldn't need to do that. And I think that would be a thing that to practice, where and when you tilt. Just become conscious about it for a while, and then usually it becomes automatic, the right way of tilting. It's a little bit of a tick at the moment.
With 9 digits and a way to buy them. So that was the prototype and problem phase in Helix.
Prototype and problem phase, that's an alliteration, another rhetorical device. Well done.
The second phase was to pilot. And in this phase, we actually recruited 10,000 households in Norway in one location.
Pretty proud over that one. We actually, yes, 10,000.
For 2 months, for them, this was a real service. They could buy digital stamps. They could put them on parcels and letters, put it in their mailbox, and the mailman would collect it and ship it off.
Could have easily actually just played that full out, like you have a box and you place a stamp, but you don't, you write on it instead. You just used more functional gestures.
This was, of course, completely fake. Manual processes.
Very good functional gesture.
And it was paper and pen and fake codes all the way. But we got real results showing that this is a product that's...
Real results is another alliteration. It means that you begin two words with the same letter or sound.
Our consumers really love. And then finally, we did the implement phase and scale it up for all of Norway. And as I said, that's the strength.
It's a good use of voice. All of Norway. Could have been more. All of Norway.
Of corporate innovation to do a scale up like this in a whole country in a matter of a few months. My second example I want to share with you is Amoy. Amoy is a digital platform, a digital marketplace where we connect small stores in city centers with the consumers at home using same-day delivery. And for this is, for us, not only a service, it's also a sandbox. It's a service where we can learn together with our customers and the stores. What works, what doesn't. We'll try
Had a good straight head there for 10 seconds.
in different geographies. We're going to try it with services.
Straight head, sorry.
And yesterday we had 11 stores on this platform, and today we have 14. Amoy is changing every day as we learn more. The way it works is that the consumer goes in and can select from across all the stores and pick products from all stores in a single order. They will choose
So we have reached 11:17, and the last 5 or 6 minutes will be pretty repetitive when it comes to the different skills and non-skills that we use. Maybe we can see a couple of new ones, but most of those that you will be using, not using, have appeared during the first 10 minutes. Now, to summarize this, you found synchronization a couple of times, strong times, and you built from that in an awesome way. So I'd say, and that brings out the best version of you. So I would say that find that prior to the presentation. Find your feeling, find your emotion, find your why, find your hunger, find your focus. And then you go up on stage and boom, you let that loose very early on. And as soon as you need energy, you just go back to that thought to re-energize yourself. Looking at a public speaking perspective and the 110 skills of excellence, I'd say that you are using a lot of them. And I'm a bit sad that this is restricted in size, because I'd like to see you use them more full out, all of them, more or less. You used register about 2 or 3 times, and that was very, very nicely done. We're using functional gestures, body movements, head movements, facial expressions. So a lot of the skills that I teach you are using, you just need to amplify them 2 or 3 notches and it'll be a different thing. And as I said, that is so much easier if you've got an audience in front of you and you've got a bigger stage to play on. Tics that I found was the head tilting, small smacks, and a favorite gesture which came up a little bit too often compared to how often it should have come up. All in all, I would say that you have an awesome foundation as a public speaker. And just by amplifying the bits that I pointed out, you'll easily level up quite a bunch of notches. And that can actually happen pretty automatically, given a big stage, giving an audience, and hooking into your why, your emotion, your drive before you go up on stage and just letting that loose. And I think one thing that it just comes down to it, and it took me so long to learn this as well, and that is just to relax and enjoy yourself on stage. If you're having fun, they'll have fun. If you think it's interesting, they'll think it's interesting. All this comes down to something called mirror neurons. And you let that out now and then in the presentation, a little bit too stiff. Just learn to enjoy yourself. It took me about a year to learn how to do that. So it's not an easy feat, but wow, it was super cool to watch. What more? Super impressed by the lack of filler sounds. Wow, that is very rare. Your pauses, excellent. Wow. Okay. I think that's about it, Alexander.
And I must say, I've been used a lot of time on removing those filler sounds, which is where most people struggle in the start, and adding the pause. I think that's made a huge effect. But it's quite interesting to see how you stop. I thought you'd see like 30 seconds and then stop, but you stop like after 3 seconds. And you focus on body language. Well, people talk about if their PowerPoints are using the right slides, are they saying the right words? And you're someone from body language, and that's so much to learn from that. So I think that's very interesting in the session.
Nice, super interesting. Thanks for having me and have a look at it. It was awesome. All right, build on those, and then you send me a new one, right?
Yes, I'll do that if I
All
dare.
right.